Hey everyone, my name is Martin and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we'll be talking about Light Switch by Puth, which I think has a really cool production, which is why I recreated it, and now I'm here to show you guys the elements of my reconstruction. So without any further ado, let's get started. So as you can see, this session is quite minimal in terms of what's going on. So I guess we'll just go over the elements one by one, starting with the drums. So first we have this conga, which is a percussion sound, and it plays the following rhythm. Then we have a kick sample that I found on Splice. And on this one I'm only using a bit of compression to make it feel a little less bloated in the overall mix. Next we have this snare sample playing on the 2 and the 4 of each bar. And this one has a DS10 drum shaper, which is basically a transient shaper, and this just adds a little bit of extra tightness and body to our snare, although this is really subtle and you can actually barely hear it. Then we have this closed hi-hat sample, and if we take a look at the piano roll, we see that the notes all have different velocity levels, and this just makes the head sound a bit more humanized and rhythmic, and also makes its rhythm better fit the other drum elements' rhythms. And if we look at the hi-hat's mixer channel, we see that I'm again making this one a bit more subtle within the mix by making the high end a little less sharp. And finally in the chorus we're using this Light Switch sample that I found on Splice, and all I'm doing here is really just clean it using an equalizer because we're basically just interested in its high mids and its high end information. So let's now take a look at the synths and instruments I'm using in this remake, starting with this synth in Keyscape. And let me actually play this one for you without any effects, as that'll really show how much mixing and processing can do to transform a sound. So this is our synth without any effects. So for this sound, the magic can really be found in the processing, and I'm starting the mixer channel with this plugin by Waves called Guitar Stomp 2. And this plugin has this wah effect built in, and this one just completely changes the sound, as you'll be able to hear now. Quite the difference, right? I'm also using a glue compressor to make the sound a bit more in the face of the listener, as well as a filter, and this one gives the sound a bit more of this resonance filter effect, and that in turn contributes to the initial wah effect that was created by the Guitar Stomp plugin. Also, I'm automating the filter cutoff, and this just makes sure that each time the chord is played, the filter actually opens up a little bit, and this actually adds even more of this wah filter effect to our sound, which is pretty cool. Then I'm continuing the mixer chain with this instance of Puth 2, and this one just gets rid of some of these resonant frequencies our sound has. And these are frequencies that are annoying to the ear, especially when you play the sound at high volume levels, and this plugin basically removes these, which is very convenient. So then I'm also using Echo Boy to create this 1/8 dotted delay effect, and the best way to describe what dotted means is by comparing this 1/8 dotted delay effect to a 1/8 standard note delay effect, as you'll be able to hear now. And I'm also automating the delay's mix level to make sure that the delay is not active at certain points in our song, like right before the chorus starts. Then another interesting thing I did to this sound was creating these fun little reverse sweeps, and I did this by inserting a moderate reverb to the sound's mixer channel, and then I just rendered the chord progression, and all I had to do then was just reverse the audio clip and use the slice tool to keep the parts I needed and to get rid of the other parts. So next we have this electric guitar from my beloved Electric Sunburst Deluxe library in Contact, and this one kind of has this washed effect that I'm achieving through instances of RC20, the free tel chorus, vintage verb, and delay. And I'm actually applying a similar trick as I did with the wah synth, which is creating these little reverse sweeps, and that just really smoothly improves the transitions in certain points of our production. So actually after creating this guitar sound, I felt it was still lacking some body and character, which is why I added some layers, like this Rhodes from Keyscape. and the JX03 from Omnisphere. And both of these are playing the same chords as the electric guitar and are also routed to the same mixer channel as the electric guitar. And that just makes sure that our overall sound, consisting of these 3 layers, sounds like one consistent sound. Then we have this mute guitar, also from Electric Soundburst Deluxe, which is a very nice background sound to fill up the space between the bass and Charlie's vocals. And this one has a very cool 80s effect, which comes from the tail chorus, and that sounds like this. So this is a plugin I've been using a lot, especially when I want to create this more retro vintage 80s feel. And the best thing about it is that it's actually free, so if you're interested, I've linked it down below. Then speaking about the 80s, we have another 80s layer, and this one actually serves as a layer in the intro, in the pre, and in the second part of the chorus. And this just adds a nice extra touch of 80s synth to our overall sound. So in terms of mixing, I'm using a low pass filter to make sure that the highs are being cut off, as we don't really need these frequencies because we want this layer to be subtle. And as I disable this plugin, you'll really be able to hear that our synth just becomes way too present. Then I'm also using S1 Imager by Waves because we want the sound to be more stereo and wide. And this also creates more room for the core elements of our production, like the vocals, the drums, and the bass, which I'll talk about now. So the bass guitar is the Retro 60s preset in Trillion, and this actually is the same preset as the one Charlie used in his song Attention, which is pretty cool and sounds like this. So to add a bit of an edge to our bass sound, I'm using Decapitator, and I'm also using this plugin called Tone Centric, which was developed by Waves in collaboration with Greg Wells, who is an amazing engineer and producer. And this one basically enhances the harmonics of any sound, making it more pleasant and richer to the ear of the listener by adding this really nice analog touch. Then we have this equalizer that serves as a high-pass filter for the intro, as in the original we can hear that the intro has a bass, but the bass does not have any low end. So through this equalizer and an automation clip, I'm making sure that the intro doesn't have any bottom end, and then when the verse starts, the bottom end of the bass is actually there again. And I'm ending the chain with this instance of FabFilter's Pro MB, which is a multiband compressor that serves for sidechaining. So what I'm doing here is I'm sidechaining the kicks mixer channel to the bass mixer channel using this sidechain to this track option. And to see what I'm specifically doing, let's actually go inside Pro MB. In the processing options, I chose the kick as our sidechain trigger. And in the expert settings, I chose the free sidechain filtering option and the external input option because our kick is basically an external signal that serves as our sidechain trigger. So the ultimate goal of this sidechain trigger is to make sure that the low end of our bass is ducking whenever the kick is played. And this just makes sure that the low ends of our kick and our bass do not really interfere with each other. And practically I'm achieving this using the threshold, range, attack, and release knobs, and I just tweaked and fine-tuned these to make sure that the bass is actually ducking whenever the kick is played. And to hear what this instance of sidechaining is doing to our kick-bass relationship, let's actually disable and then enable this instance of Pro MB to see if we can hear the difference. Then finally we have this sub bass from Sublab, because in the pre-chorus and the second part of the chorus of the original song we are hearing this sustained sub bass underneath the bass guitar, and this one is simply playing the chord's bass notes. So in terms of mixing, sidechaining was extra important here because our sub contains a lot of low end and bass information, and that makes our sub clash with both the kick and the bass guitar in terms of low end, which is why I'm using 2 instances of sidechaining. So first I'm using a fruity limiter, and this one tries to solve the interference between the kick and the sub. So what's basically happening here is that the sub's volume just drops whenever the kick is played. And I'm achieving this by sidechaining the kick's mixer channel to the sub's mixer channel. And inside Fruity Limiter, I'm choosing the kick as our input trigger. And then the second sidechain plugin is this Pro MB, which is trying to solve the interference between the bass guitar and the sub. And the sidechain process is nearly identical to the sidechain process between the kick and the bass guitar. So what I'm really just trying to make sure is that the sub's low end is ducking whenever the bass guitar is played. Finally, I want to show you guys my master chain, which does not contain much apart from these 2 plugins. And the first is the Abbey Road vinyl by Waves. So what this one does is it really just provides this magical analog touch of brightness, warmth, and depth to our mix, which you'll be able to best hear when we A/B the plugin. And second and lastly, I'm using the invisible limiter to just add a couple of extra dB and to make our final mix a bit more similar to the original song in terms of loudness. And that concludes our production breakdown. So as always, I would encourage you to go download the free project file, the stems and the MIDI files in the description below, so you can have a look at the session yourself and maybe explore some of these sounds or the mixing in more detail. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, a comment, or both, as that will really help me create more content like this in the future. So with that being said, let's now listen to the final result of my remake, and I'll see you guys next time.